Chapter 5 and 6 of the Grand Babylon Hotel. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anna Simon. The Grand Babylon Hotel by Arnold Bennett. Chapter 5. What Occurred to Reginald Dimmock. In another moment they were all three talking quite nicely, and with at any rate an appearance of being natural. Prince Aribert became suave, even deferential to Nella, and more friendly towards Nella's father than their respective positions demanded. The latter amused himself by studying this sprig of royalty, the first with whom he had ever come into contact. He decided that the young fellow was personable enough, had no frills on him, and would make an exceptionally good commercial traveller for a first-class firm. Such was Theodore Racksole's preliminary estimate of the man who might one day be the reigning Grand Duke of Posen. It occurred to Nella, and she smiled at the idea, that the bureau of the hotel was scarcely the correct place in which to receive this august young man. There he stood, with his head half-way through the bureau window, negligently leaning against the woodwork, just as though he were a stockbroker or the manager of a New York burlesque company. "Is your Highness travelling quite alone?" she asked. "By a series of accidents I am," he said. "My equerry was to have met me at Charing Cross, but he failed to do so. I cannot imagine why." "Mr. Dimmock?" questioned Racksole. "Yes, Dimmock. I do not remember that he ever missed an appointment before." "You know him? He has been here?" "He dined with us last night," said Racksole. "On Nella's invitation," he added maliciously. "But today we've seen nothing of him. I know, however, that he has engaged the State apartments, and also a suite adjoining the State apartments, number 55. That is so, isn't it, Nella?" "Yes, Papa," she said, having first demurely examined a ledger. "Your Highness would doubtless like to be conducted to your room. Apartments, I mean." Then Nella laughed deliberately at the Prince, and said, "I don't know who's the proper person to conduct you, and that's a fact. The truth is that Papa and I are rather raw yet in the hotel line. You see, we only bought the place last night." "You have bought the hotel?" exclaimed the Prince. "That's so," said Racksole. "And Felix Babylon has gone?" "He is going, if he has not already gone." "Ah, I see," said the Prince. "This is one of your American strokes. You have bought to sell again, is that not it? You are on your holidays, but you cannot resist making a few thousands by way of relaxation. I have heard of such things." "We shan't sell again, Prince, until we're tired of our bargain. Sometimes we tire very quickly, and sometimes we don't. It depends... what?" Racksole broke off suddenly to attend to a servant in livery who had quietly entered the bureau and was making urgent mysterious signs to him. "If you please, sir." The man by frantic gestures implored Mr. Theodore Racksole to come out. "Pray don't let me detain you, Mr. Racksole," said the Prince, and therefore the proprietor of the Grand Babylon departed after the servant with a queer, curt little bow to Prince Aribert. "Mayn't I come inside?" said the Prince to Nella, immediately the millionaire had gone. "Impossible, Prince," Nella laughed. "The rule against visitors entering this bureau is frightfully strict." "How do you know the rule is so strict if you only came into possession last night?" "I know because I made the rule myself this morning, your Highness." "But seriously, Miss Racksole, I want to talk to you." "Do you want to talk to me as Prince Aribert, or as the friend, the acquaintance, whom I knew in Paris last year?" "As the friend, dear lady, if I may use the term." "And you are sure that you would not like first to be conducted to your apartments?" "Not yet. I will wait till Dimmock comes. He cannot fail to be here soon." "Then we will have tea served in father's private room, the proprietor's private room, you know." "Good," he said. Nella talked through a telephone, and rang several bells, and behaved generally in a manner calculated to prove to princes and to whomever it might concern that she was a young woman of business instincts and training, and then she stepped down from her chair of office, emerged from the bureau, and, preceded by two menials, led Prince Aribert to the Louis XV chamber in which her father and Felix Babylon had had their long confabulation on the previous evening. "What do you want to talk to me about?" she asked her companion, as she poured out for him a second cup of tea. The Prince looked at her for a moment as he took the proffered cup, and being a young man of sane, healthy instincts, he could think of nothing for the moment except her loveliness. Nella was indeed beautiful that afternoon. The beauty of even the most beautiful woman ebbs and flows from hour to hour. Nella's, this afternoon, was at the flood. Vivacious, alert, imperious, and yet ineffably sweet, she seemed to radiate the very joy and exuberance of life. "I have forgotten," he said. "You have forgotten? That is surely very wrong of you. You gave me to understand that it was something terribly important. But of course I knew it couldn't be, because no man, and especially no prince, ever discussed anything really important with a woman. Recollect, Miss Racksole, that this afternoon here I am not the prince." "You are Count Steenbock, is that it?" He started. "For you only," he said, unconsciously lowering his voice. "Miss Racksole, I particularly wish that no one here should know that I was in Paris last spring." "An affair of state?" she smiled. "An affair of state," he replied soberly. "Even Dimmock doesn't know. It was strange that we should be fellow guests at that quiet out of the way hotel. Strange but delightful. I shall never forget that rainy afternoon that we spent together in the Museum of Trocadero. Let us talk about that." "About the rain or the museum?" "I shall never forget that afternoon," he repeated, ignoring the lightness of her question. "Nor I," she murmured, corresponding to his mood. "You, too, enjoyed it?" he said eagerly. "The sculptures were magnificent," she replied, hastily glancing at the ceiling. "Ah, so they were. Tell me, Miss Racksole, how did you discover my identity?" "I must not say," she answered. "That is my secret. Do not seek to penetrate it. Who knows what horrors you might discover if you probed too far?" She laughed, but she laughed alone. The Prince remained pensive, as it were brooding. "I never hope to see you again," he said. "Why not?" "One never sees again those whom one wishes to see." "As for me, I was perfectly convinced that we should meet again." "Why?" "Because I always get what I want." "Then you wanted to see me again?" "Certainly. You interested me extremely. I have never met another man who could talk so well about sculpture as the Count Steenbock." "Do you really always get what you want, Miss Racksole?" "Of course." "That is because your father is so rich, I suppose?" "Oh no, it isn't," she said. "It's simply because I always do get what I want. It's got nothing to do with father at all." "But Mr Racksole is extremely wealthy." "Wealthy isn't the word, Count. There is no word. It's positively awful, the amount of dollars poor papa makes. And the worst of it is, he can't help it. He told me once that when a man had made 10 millions, no power on earth could stop those 10 millions from growing into 20, and so it continues. I spend what I can, but I can't come near coping with it, and of course papa is no use whatever at spending." "And you have no mother?" "Who told you I had no mother?" she asked quietly. "I inquired about you," he said, with equal candour and humility. "In spite of the fact that you never hope to see me again?" "Yes, in spite of that." "How funny," she said, and lapsed into a meditative silence. "Yours must be a wonderful existence," said the Prince. "I envy you." "You envy me? What? My father's wealth?" "No," he said, "your freedom and your responsibilities." "I have no responsibilities," she remarked. "Pardon me," he said, "you have, and the time is coming when you will feel them." "I am only a girl," she murmured with sudden simplicity. "As for you, Count, surely you have sufficient responsibilities of your own." "I?" he said sadly. "I have no responsibilities. I am a nobody, a Serene Highness who has to pretend to be very important, always taking immense care never to do anything that a Serene Highness ought not to do. Bah!" "But if your nephew, Prince Eugen, were to die, would you not come to the throne, and would you not then have these responsibilities which you so much desire?" "Eugen die?" said Prince Aribert in a curious tone. "Impossible. He is the perfection of health. In 3 months he will be married. No, I shall never be anything but a Serene Highness, the most despicable of God's creatures." "But what about the State secret which you mentioned? Is not that a responsibility?" "Ah," he said, "that is over. That belongs to the past. It was an accident in my dull career. I shall never be Count Steenbock again.